Yo, what's up? This is your girl Dragon, and it's time for a quick tutorial. Let's go. Now this tutorial is a special request by Neorjt. He sent me a question that I just had to answer because it's such a great question. Now here's the question. Could you recommend a way to reward score to all those who won a round? And what a great question. We're going to go ahead and jump right into creative so we can give him an answer. Let's do it. Alright, so here is the little setup that I made here for you. Let's go ahead and dive in and take a deeper look. Let me go ahead and explain the system. When the player spawns in, they're going to be granted weapons and assigned 2 trackers. I have 1 tracker for eliminations and 1 tracker for rounds. As for the game rules, this game will end once the player reaches a certain amount of eliminations. When they reach a certain amount of eliminations, this tracker will complete and send a signal to complete this tracker, the tracker for the rounds. This tracker will then complete and award a score of 100, but while it's doing that as well, it's going to start a timer to end the round. Alright, so starting with when the player spawns. And these are all my settings. Enable during phase always, player team any, player class any, priority group don't override, uses island start as on, for testing purposes is visible during the game, audio is set to no, display enemy range is set to when near. However, you can turn it to off because it is not necessary for this particular game mode, unless you want it to be. Let's take a look at the functions or events. When player spawns, send an event to item granter and to grant the items. Let's go ahead and check out the item granter. So let's see, enabled on game start I have yes. Receiving players is triggering player. On grant action is keep all. Granting all items. Grant condition is set to always. Grant on cycle yes. Equip granted item is don't equip. Remove item on grant is no. Give extra ammo, yes, why not? Cycle behavior is set to stop. Grant on timer is off. Grant while offline is no. Drop items at player location, no. Drop items at location if inventory is full. This is set to yes, but you can set that to no. Let's see here. Play audio is no. Now let's take a look at the events. Now as far as functions, the item will be granted when the player spawns. And that is all. Alright, next up we have the elimination tracker. Stat to track is eliminations. Reset between rounds is yes. Target value is set to 5 for this test. Starting value is 0. The valid team is any. Assign on game start is yes. Assign while joining in progress is yes. Progress sharing is set to individual. Target team is any. Target class is any. Weapon category is any. When the target is reached, we're going to complete the tracker. The winning team will be the completing team. Amount to change on received signal is 1. So I have it shown on the HUD as detailed, so this means it's going to show at the top right hand corner of the screen. You can set your tracker title to anything. I'm going to go ahead and change this to eliminations because I did have it set to teams when I was testing prior. And I'll go ahead and delete that as well. Progress indicator is total. Tracker completion ceremony is set to yes. Self-eliminations do not count. Player eliminations do count. Headshots only is set to no. Non-player eliminations count set to yes, and that's because we're testing. Everything else is optional, and for persistence we're not using. Alright, let's check out the functions and events. So there's no functions needed for the elimination tracker. However, for events, you want it to be set to on complete, send event to tracker rounds, and you want it to complete the tracker when it sends the event. All right, let's check out the tracker rounds. The stat to track is rounds 1. You're going to reset between rounds. Target value is set to 3. So depending on how many rounds you want here, be sure to adjust that. Starting value is 0. Valid team is any. Assign on game start is yes. Assigning when joining in progress is yes. Progress sharing is individual. Target team is any. Target class is any. Weapon category is any. When target is reached, do nothing. As for the winning team, it will be the completing team that will win. Amount to change on received signal is 1. Show on HUD, I have it both here for testing purposes, but it doesn't look bad if you just set it to list. It looks pretty good because that means you'll have a tracker on the top left-hand side and a small list on the lower right-hand side. Tracker title is rounds 1. Of course, that's optional. You can set it to whatever you like. Progress indicator is total. Tracker completion ceremony is set to no. Self-eliminations count no. Player eliminations count yes. Again, this could be set to no. Those are the default settings. Headshots no. Non-player eliminations count no. Again, this is only tracking if an event is sent to it from the eliminations tracker. Let's go ahead and check out events and functions. Complete when receiving from the tracker elimination device. And everything else is default. And then events on complete, send an event to score manager to activate and award a score. And then the timer device score gamekeeper to start. All right, score manager round reward. Let's take a look. We have score value set to 100. The score award type is add. Activating team is any. Times can trigger infinite. Increment score on awarding is set to on. Score change when activated 100. And these are set to default, so you can leave those alone. Enabled during phase is all. Visible during game is no. I have it set to transmit on score 100. But literally it's not going to transmit on score, it's just going to be adding score, so don't worry about that. We don't have it set for an event or anything. Play audio is yes, and that's so I can know it's awarding score during testing, but during your game you want to set that to no. Display score update on HUD is on. Reset HUD message score is off. HUD message is set to U1, and you can set that to any color that you like. Let's take a look at the functions and events. So it's going to be activating when receiving from tracker rounds when it's completed. Everything else is default. And then nothing else for events. Now keep in mind, while that tracker completes here, it's going to start a timer, and let's take a look at that. Alright, the timer duration is set to 3 seconds. The timer direction is a countdown. Start timer at game start is set to off. Activating team is any. Allowed class is any. This applies to everyone. Reset timer if failing team or class check is off. Disable timer if failing team or class check is off. Results on timer end is success. Completion behavior is stop. Visible during game is yes. And again, this is just for testing, but you want to make sure you set that to no. Timer color is red. You can display the time in minutes and seconds. And timer not started text, again, all optional. I have it set to ending game as the timer running text. Success score value is set to 0. And failure score penalty is set to 0. Score per second remaining is 0. And this is going to show on HUD. We have timer label text style is set to bold. Save timer, don't save. Urgency mode is never, and there's no urgency text needed. Audio effects is on because we're testing, but when you're live, make sure to set that to off. If instigating player is not present, pick a random player. Display score update on HUD is set to off. Alright, let's take a look at the functions and events. So for functions, it's start when receiving from, tracker rounds on complete. Everything else is default. And on success, you're going to send an event to the in-game device to activate. Alright, so this in-game device is going to end the round and award the winning team. You can set whatever you want to set here. The game end callout is set to default. Enabled at game start is enabled. Activating team is any. Allowed class is any. And post-game type is classic for this tutorial. Now that I've shown you everything that you need for your basic setup, let's take a look at what you're going to need to set for your UI to help with the system. Alright, so let's take a look at the game rules. Voice chat is set to all, max players is set to 2 because we're testing here. Teams is set for free for all. The team size is 1 for individual teams, since the scoring is going to be based off of individual players. We have it set to a matchmaking type of flexible teams on public. There's no class identifier needed, so it's set to none. Revert to default class at the end of game. Spawn limit is infinite, and spectator mode. All these are optional depending on the type of games that you want. What's important is the rounds. You want to make sure that your rounds match your tracker device. So we have it set to 3 rounds, and the tracker is also tracking 3 rounds. Everything else is optional. All teams must finish. Unless you're using teams, I wouldn't use this because it's an individual game, so make sure that is set to no. You don't need to set eliminations to end since you're using the tracker device, so make sure that's set to off, and so on. So go. And you may need to make some adjustments for your own particular game. UI. Now this is important as well. I have game winner display time at 3 seconds. Again, this is optional. You can set it to whatever you like. The HUD info type is set to score. That way players can track their score while the game is in progress. Show top center scoring HUD is set to no. UI team colors is team colors. Max trackers on HUD is set to 2, and that's because we're testing. Show cumulative stat value on HUD is set to yes. This is important because every game that they win, you want them to see their score accumulate, so that's really good to have. Show resource feed on eliminations is optional. I have that set to yes. Use team score should be set to no, unless you're using teams. Team alive for tracking method is the default. Round 1 condition is set to none because we're using the tracker to set those conditions. There's no tiebreaker needed. The first scoreboard column will be eliminations, the second will be score, and so on. Everything else is optional. Also, you want to make sure you do show the cumulative scoreboard set to yes, and display scoreboard set to yes. The overview map is optional. And there you go. And that is your setup. Let's go ahead and run a test so we can see what it looks like. As you notice during this test, we have been awarded the score. You're going to see that it's going to clear off on the right hand side of the round. So it shows, again, a score of 100 once they reach the elimination and they win the round. And again, now you see a score of 200. Alright, and that's 3 rounds. You should have a score of 300. There you go. Yo, and there you go. That's how you create a game that awards points by the round. If this helped you out, please drop a like and a sub. It really helps out the channel. And if you do, I appreciate it so much. Alright, you guys, that's going to do it for this video. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye!